Welcome to On Your Own Terms. I'm Patty Talbot, and this is the place where we learn together what it takes to change the world on our own terms and in our own special ways. Today, I'm so excited to have with me my friend Stacey Bolt. Stacey is a therapist in my community, and I met Stacey last summer at a local event put on by the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce in my local town. They were doing a women's leadership event, and Stacey was kind enough to come to my session that was all about women changing the world. And she was kind and enthusiastic about my message, and I have just enjoyed getting to know her since that time. I invited her to be a guest on our show because she's a change maker making a difference for families and individuals in my hometown. But her message is applicable to you and the ones you love, no matter where you live in our area, in the state of Virginia, anywhere in the United States, or indeed anywhere in the world, because mental health affects us all. I asked Stacey to tell us about her homegrown solutions for a patchwork world that help her to show up and be a wonderful change maker in our community. This is Stacey Bolt.
I'm from Independence, Virginia, which is in Grayson County, a little southwest part of the state. I grew up like right there at the North Carolina line, and we would vacation. We were either going to Tennessee or South Carolina, so very much South Appalachian, born and raised. So much the fabric of who I am and where I come from. Part of Appalachian values are hard work, and that was modeled tremendously growing up in Independence in Grayson County. You've been there, it's beautiful, but there's not a lot going on. There was a lot of family, a lot of church, a lot of nature, and a lot of seeing my family work and what that looked like. That still influences us. I don't live there anymore, but we go back a lot and spend a lot of time there, and our families are still there. Thriving, I would say. My dad lives in Elk Creek Valley and just loves it, and my grandma still works full time. She's 83. My mom works. She's a travel nurse. Always modeled a lot of giving and social awareness and that sort of thing. So. At this point, can say I think my life is pretty well dedicated to trying to support the mental health needs of this part of the state specifically, and westward, and then just all of Appalachia. And where I see those worlds colliding the most is family and mental health, not just awareness, but action and understanding and attachment and all those things that go into generational families, which we know is a big part of Appalachian culture, is the influence that not just our grandparents have, but their grandparents. I grew up hearing about my grandparents. It's very much a living part of our history, even though those people aren't thus anymore. And where that intersects with mental health is the concept of generational trauma. So I'm very passionate about supporting moms. I'm a perinatal mental health specialist. I have a small practice here in Blacksburg where we're so fortunate to have an excellent play therapist. Literally right before I jumped on here, we had a mom having a session at the same time that the child was having a session, and we just love it when it works out like that. We have a male counselor who's on staff. They're unicorns in the mental health world, but he's excellent. Also from Appalachia, the Wytheville area. He works more with the adolescents and teenagers. All of us are very committed, and actually his wife is going to be joining us next month, coming on board, and we'll have a pretty full house after that. They're going to share an office, and my husband's in school for counseling, so it's going to be a family business on a few levels. So going back to the Appalachian influence, there wasn't a lot of talk processing. There wasn't a lot of, how are you feeling about this? What do you think about this? Is there something you want said? And so you really have to step outside of some of your default settings to encounter some of that. And a lot of times that looks like not knowing what to do with them. And so I like meeting people there. I like understanding the parts of them that maybe are really uncomfortable with therapy and then helping them do it anyway. I often say I like supporting the supporters. The counselors here are all working on their license. I was in solo practice for a little while and found I don't like just doing this by myself. So again, tying that back to Appalachia, it's very community focused. It's helping the next person focused. It's expanding your reach, giving, planting. And so I see all those things showing up in how I approach my work and running a business, which I never ever thought I would do, but I'm finding that I actually quite love the creativity, rolling your sleeves up, all the hard work that comes with that. It feels very natural to me, and I really enjoyed stepping into that. Part of what that looks like from a solution focused perspective is I like to think that I can see the need and figure out how to meet it. And sometimes that's creativity, sometimes it's just knowing what your resources are, knowing how to be resourceful and being willing to say, I'm not the solution, but I think you are. Can we build a bridge? And that is the kind of thing that just gives me life. It's so exciting. I love seeing people get connected, services get connected. And I've, in my career, worked in different types of settings where I had some opportunity to do that, but it's different when you're doing it for yourself with your own vision, with your own resources and creativity and time, things like that. So we really want to see families strengthened here. I think that is the answer to a lot of our current problems. We need people to have each other and have relationships and feel secure in those relationships and be able to talk about things and be able to get through hardship together. In counseling, we say a lot, relationships are full of ruptures and repairs. And I think we could all do better at the repair part. And so that's a big part of what we try to teach in counseling here. And just helping adapt to the world. It's hard right now. And helping every little bit of that family unit live their life hopefully a little easier and a little more secure. I think it's an Arthur Ashe quote that says, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. I think in grad school, we had this long list of quotes and we had to pick one that we wanted to carry with us. That is our mission statement. And I think that's who said it. And that's what he said, because that's the one I picked. But that's what comes to mind for me. It takes all of us just doing our thing, being our corner of the world, and pairing it up with someone else doing their thing in their corner of the world. And we don't have to be the everything and everything to everyone. I need to know what my thing is and find someone who knows what their thing is. And then together we have two things. And then those two things become 10 things. And it's funny how that works. And so a lot of that is humility and recognizing I'm not the expert on you or your passions, but you are, and what can I learn from you? Visual that came up for me was creating a bridge, but not just so I can get somewhere. It's a two-way, it's coming and going. And I think sometimes we approach diversity from we're Americans, we're very individualized, we're very me. And I think we really have to consciously step out of that and engage with the parts of the world, the parts of our culture, the parts of our society, the parts of our communities that we don't know and we're not the expert on. And we can't do that without humility and without a willingness to learn and engage and just step outside of our daily lives, which are very busy. And sometimes I think it's not a matter of not wanting to, but people aren't creating the space to do that, to have those conversations. This brings to mind engaging in the arts. That was not something I grew up with any level of exposure to. I can remember the first time I saw anything at the Barter Theater. I think it was White Christmas. And I just sat there and I had tears come down my eyes because I was like, I didn't know about theater. Theater is amazing. But growing up where you don't really do the extra stuff, that was something that I missed out on. And I think when we look at the arts in the way that different cultures and communities have cultivated art, I was very aware of music being part of Appalachian art, but not so much the expressive theater or even really painting and things like that. So that's something that I've encountered in my adult life and want to bring into more, because I think that has been such a way that oppressed people have expressed themselves. It's not always what we can sit down and talk about. It's about how we tell our stories. And so that's something I've been interested in learning and just accessing more recently, is what foods have people come up with that express their lives or that sum up their hardships. There's a lot we can learn just from what's created out of adversity or hardship that's not the spoken word. As we talked about patchwork, one of the things that came up to me was the diligence of I'm a big small things daily person. So what is the thing that we chip away at? What's the thing that we're willing to continually try hard at? And that's what came up when I thought about patchwork, because my husband's grandmother, she was an excellent quilter, just beautiful works. She was in a car accident, so she had to sit down for a long time. And I think that's when a lot of these quilts were created, but it must be when I think she already knew how to do it, but she got really good at it and produced some just beautiful things. But when I saw all of them at once, when she passed away, which was so sad because it was about 6 weeks before my son was born, so they just missed each other. But when I saw this oak chest full of quilts, I thought, my gosh, I could never do that. Just the time that it took to sit down and commit and do the same thing. It's just so amazing to really inspect any quilt, but especially huge ones or ones that have cathedral patterns, or it's just amazing. And you look at all the different little bits of fabric and think, what did this make? Who wore this? What did it look like? It's just really mind-boggling to sit with. I can't think of any quilts where it was just all the same fabric. And that wouldn't have really been that impressive. It would have been impressive, but it wouldn't have been a quilt. It wouldn't have been art. It wouldn't have been so deep in what was represented. If there were all those swatches of fabric represent things that she's made and probably made for her family and made for other people. And they wouldn't necessarily all go together, but they did in the way that it was created and cultivated. And I think one way that comes up is being in Southwest Virginia, being in Appalachia, and then having moved. I lived in Charlotte, I lived in Northern Virginia. Even Blacksburg is so much more diverse than Grayson County, which is just not diverse. Galax is a little bit more, we have more immigrant populations represented, and it's a city technically, I think. But I really had a lot of growing that I had to do and learning and exposure, and something that I found from my graduate cohort at Wake Forest, which I'm so glad was very diverse, is that in a lot of ways we were more similar than different. So a lot of the hesitations that exist with the Black community engaging in therapy are some of what's true of the Appalachian community. Of we haven't historically been treated all that when we've tried to access care. We maybe just don't even have a history of accessing care. What would our family think if we access care? What would my family think if I named my diagnoses or even admitted that I was going to therapy every week or every other week? So some of those barriers exist across a lot of different communities and individuals, and it's something we always want to be aware of not just what does this person need in therapy, but what did they have to overcome to even get here? What are they going back to when they leave here? How are they thinking about themselves just by needing or wanting to engage in this? And I think that we just absolutely have to hold that weight and take into consideration the person's lived experience. I talked earlier about generational trauma, but it's not just generational trauma, there's also generational strengths. And so trying to see the whole picture of the person, which includes their lived experiences and the lived experiences of who the people they come from. And sometimes that means confronting histories that we are not proud of and engaging in very real, deep work with people who are maybe hurt by that and really taking ownership of that, an important task. Part of my wish is that everyone could have coverage. So much of what frustrates me is seeing people knowing what their needs are and having the limitations of your insurance says you can only do this, or your insurance says you'll only get coverage after you pay most of your fee. Prohibitive to the needs that people have. And I think in a lot of ways perpetuates the problem, which is that we're not taking care of people who don't have privilege. And I think that's a burden that I have always acknowledged is there, but we just haven't taken a lot of action into that. It's not something I can solve, but I can tell you from our perspective, we're committed to taking Medicaid, which a lot of providers won't. Medicaid and Medicare can be difficult to work with, and we just really don't want people to, it's not unheard of that I talked to someone who said they called 20 counselors before they found someone they could get in with. And that's just not okay, especially if we're thinking about it from a preventative standpoint. Let's go upstream. That was something that I was taught pretty early in my education. We could stay downstream and pull people out of the water, but what if we walked upstream and found out why they were falling in? And so early intervention, early education, supporting moms. So much happens in that first year of life, and then in those first 3 years of life, and in those first 5 years of life. The way the structures are now, we're not catching kids until they're having behavior problems. How can I help moms recognize that they're depressed, and what do we do about that? Or how do we grieve a loss that happened so that we can then parent the existing children we have? Those sorts of things. I think a lot of people may not understand counseling in that you don't always know what work you accomplished. You don't necessarily leave healed fully, or feel like I was sick and now I'm not. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes the clarity happens and we work through things. But I think our ripple within my practice and what we're trying to build here is that we're really going upstream and finding out what people are falling in, or helping them learn how to swim or craft, and say, hey, listen, there's a waterfall up there. What do you want to do with that? And trusting that they're going to get downstream however they need to, but we really don't want to have a reactive model. We want to see proactive care. We want to see people have secure relationships, security even just within themselves, that they can trust their instincts, or learn how to maybe not do things exactly how it was done to them. Just really equip people for life. And so much of that is preventative and is not easily measurable, and that's okay. But we also, as Americans, we also don't really love ambiguity. I think the meanest look I ever get back from a client is when I start to talk to them about the gray area. We like black and white thinking, but most of life is in the gray. And so we really have to be comfortable with that. And so I think, summing all that up, I just like getting people to think about things outside of how society told them to, or their family told them to, or their subculture tells them to. Like, most of those rules are fake. You can really stop and think, what do I want? Why do I think I have to do this? Why do I think I should be doing this? Why do I think I'm being judged? Or why am I judging myself for what I'm doing or not doing? And that's not to say that social and societal norms don't exist for a reason. We don't tell people, you don't have to drive the speed limit, but maybe you don't have to shower every single day if you have sensory needs. We could probably come up with some creative solutions for that. And there's a freedom that happens when you tell people, you don't have to do it the way that you see it done on TV, or people doing it on social media, or that you imagine everyone in your life is. So I love that. I love just breaking out those boxes that we put ourselves in. Something we do in play therapy with kids is play Icebreaker, the game where you pack in the cubes and you hit away at them with the hammer. You pack in some little plastic ice cubes, and then you hit them with a hammer one at a time. And sometimes one falls, sometimes 10 fall. If they all fall, you lose. But the way we play it is like, what's one thing that you want to just tap out and get rid of? And a lot of times it's a social construct, or it's a criticism that happened when we were 7 and we've internalized it forever and ever and never went toe to toe with it. And that's just such fun work. Like, I will always do that. I'll always be asking people to ask themselves why they're doing what they're doing. And what I really need understood is that we are not witch hunters. We are not probation officers. It's gentle. It's kind. It's not to tell you what's wrong with you or how you're messing up. We might tell you that at some point. Probably if we've been seeing you for a while, we might say, hey, you're sabotaging yourself because it makes you feel like you're in control, or whatever. But that's not what we're out to do. For the most part, therapists, clinical social workers, we just want to help people. And most of us were people that didn't feel like we got help when we needed it. And so we became that in the world. And a lot of us feel good doing that. It's a lot of work to become a therapist. People aren't in it for the money. People aren't in it for the clout. You don't get clout. It's a very private, personal thing. But being connected with therapists as I am, and having encountered counselors from who did my supervision, and now the people I'm doing supervision for, it's just, we just want to help. And we've dedicated our lives to learning, hopefully, help. So if you have a family member that's in therapy, know that they're doing really hard work. Something that comes up in therapy so much is about the subject of boundaries. Everyone thinks of boundaries as being like what keeps you out. But if I have any message, it's that boundaries are also what keep people in. So ask them about, what are you talking about? What are you working on? What's been hard for you? Lean into hard conversations, because your relationships will go so much deeper when you just acknowledge someone in their life and in the work that they're doing. And if you thought about going to therapy and you're like, no, that's for crazy people, or whatever message you've internalized, just go and see if you like it or not. Sometimes people are like, no way, that's way too personal. I don't want to open up. That's okay. But what a lot of people find is they're surprised that it's helpful just to get to talk about themselves for an hour to someone who's listening. And it's not reciprocal. It's not, oh, my day was good. How was your day? It's really all about you for an hour. And what happens when you engage in that is that you can suddenly do things outside of that hour that you were maybe holding yourself back from because you needed to preserve that energy. And it can just be really helpful. There's lots of different modalities. The other thing I'll say is, if you start counseling and you don't love it, and part of why you don't love it is that you don't feel like it's a good fit with your counselor, get a different counselor if you can find one, because there aren't enough. But a lot of the good work that happens is because of the relationship. Counseling is a very relational practice. It's a relationship that you can just safely try things out on. You can try out being assertive and not people pleasing, or not taking care of someone for a change. You can try out being vulnerable. It's a good practice run, but you have to feel like you have a good relationship with your counselor. So if you feel like you don't, either bring it up and talk about it. I felt pissed off when I left last time. Can we talk about that? Yes, you can. I'm always going to call on you to reflect, to spend time with yourself, check in with yourself. How am I doing? What do I feel? What do I need? Is there anything bugging me so far today? Just take as good of care of yourself as you are the people in your life. That doesn't tend to happen automatically for a lot of us. We have to really create space and time and intention and willingness and focus. We have to go out of our way to do that, but I think it's worth it. Get outside and move, and be willing to sit with yourself. I think it's good practice to develop a good feelings word vocabulary. You can look that up. The idea is, if you can name it, you can tame it. So get in the habit of naming your feeling really specifically. Name them for other people. You feel really dismissed, and it just takes all those daily encounters a little deeper. And I think we all really need to go there. The current Surgeon General's warning is isolation. And so develop those things that pull you out of that and pull you into connection, because it really is life-giving, and it's only getting more necessary. If you want to know more about counseling, if I can help you find someone that you think might be a good fit, if you're curious about the different types of approaches and want to find what sounds good to you, feel free to reach out. If you are in Virginia, I have a referral network. If you're in the States, I can give you some guidance on the licensing boards and things like that. Broader world, I know Patty has a big audience. I'm still happy to help you learn generally about the different styles. Like I said, some are going to be more directive, some are going to be more gentle. Check in with yourself, figure out what you might want, what you might need. There are lots of different emerging approaches that use more neuroscience, which is really exciting, and we're finding are really effective at treating trauma a lot faster. It's really cool. We love to see that happening. It's important for our first responders, our children, You can find out so much online. Psychology Today is a good place to start. Therapy Den. In the States, there's Mental Health Match. Hopefully, you can talk to your primary care doctor, your general practitioner, and talk to your friends. Talk to people who have maybe been through things. In the States, you can call your insurance, find out who's in network, ask what your benefits are, try to be informed on those things. There's should be a member services number on the back of your card, and you can find out a lot of what you need to know. I can only provide therapy in the state of Virginia. That's a licensing law. Exciting thing, though, that comes to mind is there's something happening called the Counseling Compact. I think at this point, 26 states have signed into it. And it's basically an agreement that we will all honor other states' professional counseling license. So if I'm a perinatal mental health specialist, and someone in Indiana can't find someone who works with perinatal grief, hopefully we can get connected outside of the state lines, because as it is right now, you can only practice in the state that you're licensed in. So that's an exciting thing to know. My email address is Bolt, B-O-L-T, that's my last name, B-O-L-T, counseling, COUNSELING, at thecalmed, THECALMED.com.
Thank you, Stacey. Your passion for the community and the region in which we both live shines through. And even more importantly, your commitment to the mental health of the clients that you serve indeed does have potential to have an important ripple effect. Here on Your Own Terms, those who come regularly will know that we often refer to our Changemaker framework: beingness, doingness, connectedness, and reflectiveness, that contains within it the 16 attributes that all changemakers have in common. Stacey certainly has all of them, but today I want to especially draw your attention to the connectedness quadrant. This is the relationships piece. This is where our social emotional intelligence comes into play, especially empathy and good communication, as well as cultural competencies. Can you hear how strongly and vibrantly Stacey represents the connectedness quadrant? Because as she says, counseling and therapy are very relational. People who are in the field of mental health must have very strong connectedness skills. I think you can also easily see how Stacey's work relates to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly number 3, good health and well-being. Without good health and well-being, it really isn't possible for us to affect the other 16 of those goals. Without good health and well-being, we're not able to bring the best quality education. We're not able to work on poverty and solve the hunger crisis in the world. We can't even build the infrastructure and the businesses and the strong institutions that are required. And without good mental health, we don't make good partners. So goal number 3, good health and well-being, including mental health, is key to attaining the rest of those global goals. That's what it takes to be a change maker. Show up with all your skills and work deliberately toward the goals. That is how the world is changed. That's what Blue Roads Education and Changemaker U is here to do, to celebrate, support, and cultivate changemakers like Stacey and like you. Take a look at my website at blueroadseducation.org to learn more about how you can develop those 16 skills in the service of at least one of those goals, so that together we can change the world on our own terms. Next week, I will feature another amazing change-making woman who's developing her skills as a change maker to impact at least one of those sustainable development goals, so she can change the world on her own terms. In the meantime, may you remain grounded in your homegrown beingness, guided in the solutions you're working on with your doingness, generous in your connectedness for positive relationships that will help us all be better people, and inspired in your reflectiveness, so what you do can ripple out and make the world a better place on your own terms. I'm Patty Talbot. I'm always learning, and I know you are too.
you.